Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. Heavy Hammer Bushcraft, back with another episode of Bushcraft Talk, I guess. Today, I think we might hurt some feelings. In a fun way, but we still might hurt some feelings. I've been thinking about fire starting a lot because it's that time of the year and I'm getting ready to go out and possibly do something. And I always have to wonder, what fire starting methods do I bring with me? Personally, I'm not a fan of friction fires. We're going to get into that in just a minute. So I don't usually consider them. But I was wondering, who decided that the bow drill is the end-all, be-all of bushcraft fire starting technique? I mean, who came up with this? Bow drills are cool. They're flashy. As far as primitive skills go, is it a primitive skill? Compared to a big lighter, yeah, the bow drill is primitive. I will give you that. But if you really want to look at primitive fire starting methods, you kind of got to look at prehistory a little bit. What are the odds that primitive man discovered fire through friction and a bow drill? And what are the odds? Pretty slim, I think, because it requires knowledge of cordage, obviously tool making to cut the sticks and cut the channels in the wood and everything else, and knowledge of friction, which is a little bit of semi-advanced scientific knowledge. So is that really a primitive fire starting method? Yes, but no. It's not that primitive in my opinion. Then you've got the hand drill, which is definitely a step backwards in technology because there's no bow, there's no cordage. It's just hands on a stick, hands on a stick. Primitive, yes, but still requires knowledge of friction. For primitive fire starting methods, I really think you need to look at flint and steel. That's probably the only way primitive fire was accidentally discovered or accidentally created. Because you don't actually need steel. You just need a hard rock and another rock and chip, and you have sparks, which can start a fire. That's probably the easiest method that fire was ever discovered. I've done that stuff accidentally myself a million times. Toss a couple rocks and say, oh, hey, that sparked. Cool. All right. It still happens accidentally today, so I'm sure it happened accidentally in prehistory as well. So I think if you want to look at primitive methods of fire starting, I really think flint and steel is where you need to look. Plus, like I said, I don't know who started the bow drill as the bushcraft fire starting method to end all things, but the the bow drill fire method has a lot of dependencies that have to be met. Your hearthboard has to be right, your drill has to be right, your cordage and your bow have to be right, plus the environment has to be right. If it's too wet, too humid, too moist, those can all create issues. If your hearthboard isn't dry enough, there's an issue. If your drill isn't quite dry enough, there's an issue. So even when you look at the bow drill in terms of survival, because I know a lot of people love to tout the bow drill as a survival fire starting technique. Okay, that's great. If you get stuck in a survival situation, however, you don't have your kit. You have what you're wearing, possibly a pocket knife. It's never a good situation in survival. You're never prepared for survival. And if you're testing yourself by going out and putting yourself in a survival situation, you're still not in a survival situation because you're in a situation you can walk out of at any time you want to. That's not survival. The pressure, the mental fatigue is not there. It's a good way to test skills, but it's not a survival situation, and it's never going to equate to a survival situation. And to make a bow drill in a situation where you are actually trying to survive, let's assume you have a pocket knife, your wallet, your clothes, and that's probably about it. Let's just say that. Your kit got washed downstream. You were driving to the store, didn't have a bug out bag, didn't have an emergency bag or a go bag with you. Something happens, whatever. You're in a Piper Cub crash in the Alaskan bush and the plane catches fire as it hits the ground and you manage to get out just barely with your life. Something like that. Survival situation. Unless you have very, very good methods of making cordage learned and know the right materials in the area that you're in to make that cordage with, you're left with a strip of your shirt, your boot laces. I'm not willing... excuse me, I'm not willing to sacrifice my bootlace to make a bow drill because I don't like blisters. And if I'm in a situation where I've got to walk a long ways through the bush, I'm not trying to sacrifice a bootlace. Now, if there's no other way possible for me to do that, yeah, I mean, I'll have to do what I'll have to do. That being said, I can probably find a couple rocks on the ground and just dink, dink, dink. Ooh, that one made a spark. Now I've got a fire starting method that it doesn't matter if the rocks are wet, if it's humid, it doesn't matter what's going on. As long as I can find dry tinder, I can get a fire started with that. I can make a fire with that multiple times, more than just once. I'm not wearing myself out. I'm not getting extra tired. I'm not burning calories that I don't have the ability to replace. I'm just starting a fire with 2 rocks. It seems to me like that makes a whole lot more sense. And as far as bushcraft goes, I think people too often forget. I've read Nessmuck and I've read Kephart, and I've lived this. I've done this since I was a kid. I mean, I grew up doing this stuff before it was actually even really called bushcraft. I mean, I guess back then Horace Kephart and Nessmuck always called it campcraft or woodcraft, which always seems more fitting to me, but bushcraft is the accepted terminology now. Our purpose isn't to go out and struggle and survive. Nessmuck says, and I quote it all the time, we do not go into the woods to rough it. We get it rough enough in towns and cities and buildings. We go into the woods to smooth it. To have fun, to relax. It's the enjoyment of the wilderness and that environment. That's why we're out there. We're not out there punishing ourselves. We're trying to relax, have fun, and get in touch with nature and have a good time. So, is a bow drill going to smooth it? Or is that just another possible point of frustration that's going to drive you nuts? I lean way towards the latter. And if you're just starting out in bushcraft for the blending with the bushcraft for beginners series and all that, if you're just starting out in bushcraft, don't worry about a bow drill. Don't worry about a hand drill. Don't worry about friction fire. These are not essentials of the craft. They're not mandatory to know for bushcraft. They're cool. They're flashy. They look good on video. That's the extent of it. Ferro rods, Bic lighters, matches, solar ignition. Those are all way, way better fire starting methods in my opinion. I don't carry a bow drill set with me. I don't practice with a bow drill. I don't practice with a hand drill. Should I? Maybe. But I do practice with a ferro rod. I do practice with flint and steel. I do practice with a lighter, and I do practice with matches. And if you've ever read Nessmuck or Kephart, I highly recommend you do, first of all. Second of all, they never talk about bow drills. They never talk about friction fire. They're not rubbing 2 sticks together to start a fire. They're bringing matches, usually strike anywheres, in a waterproof match safe. You can buy a Marbles waterproof match safe for less than $10. It holds a bunch of matches, has a striker on the side, so you can hit your strike anywheres right there. If you can't get strike anywheres where you're at, you can get strike on box and put them in a Ziploc bag to keep them dry. It's not a complicated process. It doesn't have to be difficult. We're going into the woods to smooth it and to relax and to have fun and enjoy leisure time, not to work our tails off. So keep that in mind when you're out there. Unless you're practicing a primitive skill for primitive skills survival, it's a different story. Go out there and start a fire with whatever you've got. If you've got a ferro rod and you want to use a ferro rod, use a ferro rod. If you want to use flint and steel, use a flint and steel. If you want to use solar ignition, use solar ignition. If you want to use a Bic lighter, use a Bic lighter. If you absolutely want to do a bow drill, by all means, go ahead and do it. But understand, it is not a mandatory requirement of bushcraft. It is bushcraft scene points. It's the equivalent of putting $1,500 rims on a $300 Honda Civic, in my opinion. That's really what it is. It's flashy. It looks cool on camera. So like I said, I'm going to hurt some feelings today with that statement probably because there's a whole bunch of people in this community that swear by the bow drill. Well, I'm obviously not one of those. But I just wanted to talk about that and address that because I see it a lot and it irks me to see it because I don't use one and I've been doing this stuff. well, 35 years or so by myself, almost, probably. I mean, I started camping out in the bush, in the woods behind my house when I was 10 years old. So yeah, that was 35, 36 years ago. And I've never once used a bow drill or had need for one. So keep that in mind. It's just a point to convey that these are not the things that you need to do to be considered a bushcrafter. So you need to go out into the wilderness, enjoy yourself, relax, have some fun, and be a part of nature and be in your natural habitat. That's bushcraft. That's all. So hopefully you got some value out of this video anyways. I don't know how these, Bushcraft Talk videos are going or how they're going to go, but I'm kind of having fun with them as it gives me a chance to vent and get some of this stuff off my chest. So if you're enjoying it, like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up, all that nonsense. If you really want to support the channel, support what I'm doing, head over to Etsy, grab you a hoodie or a coffee cup or a t-shirt. I really appreciate the support. Anything that gets bought, any profits that come back to me go back into the channel for either camera equipment or audio equipment or something like that. I mean, I'm not trying to, live off of this stuff. I'm just doing this mostly for fun. So, obviously like us on Instagram and Facebook if you'd like to. And I think that's about all I got. So we'll see you in the bush.